Hello everybody, my name is Matthew Dobler. Welcome back to my channel, The Online Litigator. The goal of this channel is to provide us with a place where we can discuss new techniques and ideas and approaches to litigating cases online. I love law, I love technology, and I love litigation, and I hope you either do too, or I can help you find that love. So let's get started. Today's video is a little bit different. Earlier tonight, I interviewed an attorney named Coreen Wilson, who is the first attorney to have an online civil jury verdict. She was kind enough to stop into a Zoom room with me tonight, and we spent a few minutes there just chatting about online litigation. So without any further ado, let me play the interview. Here we are, folks. I am in a Zoom conference room with Coreen Wilson. Coreen is an attorney from Washington State, and she was recently one of the first attorneys, Coreen, in the world, right? We say it in the world. She was one of the first attorneys in the world who completed a jury trial online via Zoom. Welcome, Coreen.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite the experience.
I can imagine. And we do think it's in the world, right?
I believe so. Yes. I have not heard of any other binding jury trials that have been completed over Zoom prior to ours.
Oh man, that is so amazing. I mean, before we even get into it, how does it feel? How does it feel to be the first lawyer to do this thing?
You know, it was really exciting. And at the time, I remember thinking when I was doing the trial, I can't believe I'm actually doing this, because it was just so new and unique and not something that I ever foresaw myself being a part of. I mean, not, graduating from law school me, not 6 months ago me. I never saw myself doing a trial over a video platform, and to do it and to actually pull it off was really an indescribable experience.
I can imagine. I think it's the coolest thing. And I really do I feel like I'm not even in the same room as you, but just to share bandwidth with you, I feel like I'm in rarefied bandwidth just to be near you. It's really cool. And I don't say, I mean, I'm serious when I say that. I really think that that's impressive. I talked for a long time. A lot of lawyer friends and I talked about, who do you think is going to be the first attorney? Who do you think is going to be the first attorney? And here I get to meet you and see you and know who you are. It's cool. Let's lay the ground rules that we agreed to for this interview. So that everybody knows, Coreen recently did a fantastic presentation on all the lessons that she learned from her online civil jury trial. And that is available for free, right? For free from the NITA website. And we will include a link to that. Hopefully, if I get my my YouTube technology correct, there will be a link on the screen now, and there will also be a link down in the description. And Coreen, we agreed that since that presentation was so good, we weren't going to go all the way back through all that material here today, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And one of the reasons, people, that we agreed to that is because it is so good. And Coreen is going to be too modest to agree to this, but I have to tell you that this presentation that she put together is really one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And if you are practicing law online at all right now, I think you should consider this video required viewing. Okay. So, I've gushed and Coreen, we're not going to go all the way back through all that stuff. But, one of the things that they said that was interesting during that presentation was that they got more questions for you than they got for any other presentation they ever had before. What did you think about all that?
Right. Over 100 questions. I had over 100 questions myself when I was starting to prepare for my jury trial. So I see where that comes from. This is new for all of us.
Yeah. Well, when she said that, I thought to myself, boy, what we got to do is we got to get Coreen sat down and we got to ask her some more questions. So let me ask you what I think is the most practical question first. I mean, let me just hit the viewers right here with all practical knowledge right up front. And let me ask you this. You get a phone call in your office one day, and it's rando lawyer from any city, USA, and he calls you and he's a little panicked and he says, listen, before the pandemic, I was in the middle of a jury trial and it got postponed when the pandemic hit and when the quarantine hit, and we've just been in limbo for 6 months. And today I got an order from the court that said we're going to start again, and we're going to start again via Zoom. And I don't know what to do. And I know I need help, and I know I need to make a phone call. Coreen, who should I call? What do you tell this person, Coreen? What do you tell this person that they should do?
Well, regardless of how well versed anyone is with technology, I highly recommend contacting someone who can provide trial technology support. And for me, that was Noah Wick, who is the National Director of Litigation at Trial Exhibits. He basically held my hand through the entire trial. And what he really helped me to do was not only provide the trial tech support for the trial so that it went off without a hitch, but he also was able to give me a menu of options that I didn't even know were out there.
Hmm.
So that you can change your mindset toward it's really hard to get out of the mindset of, I need to do this the way that I've always done it, but now I'm doing it over a camera. That's not the way you want to present your trial if you want to do it effectively. What you need to do is explore, okay, now that I'm using this technology platform, it opens up a whole new world of options, and that's actually really cool. And if you
Mm-hmm.
have somebody who can explain those options and lay them out for you, you can then pick and choose depending on what your trial is, what your personal style is, what you're comfortable with, what works for what you're presenting. That's the first call you should make, is someone who can help you through that process.
And I mean, more specifically, do you think Wick is the person that a rando lawyer from anywhere in the country, or do you think the person that you call needs to be local? I guess that's a good question. Did you find an urgency to the person being in your same locality?
No, Trial Exhibits is nationwide.
Okay.
So Noah Wick is actually located in my area, but he's the national director. So it just coincidentally worked out that he was close to where I am, but he can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And people from his company can and do go anywhere. They have locations across the country. And because he was involved in this first trial, and he's actually worked really closely with Zoom and has been in contact with general counsel of Zoom and has talked to them about security issues and features that are specific to trial presentations, he would definitely be someone I'd recommend over whoever your local person is. I mean, not to knock anybody local, but
Sure.
he definitely has the expertise and the knowledge that if you're doing this for the first time, you're really going to want to lean into.
Mm-hmm. What was the most surprising thing about litigating a case online to you?
That I had to learn how to do it all over again. I've been trying cases for 20 years. I've tried more than 30, 40, I lost count after 40. I think it's 43 cases to verdict. And I felt like I was a new lawyer all over again. It was like starting from scratch because it's a whole new process.
Like a
I had
baby
to
deer with
reinvent.
Bambi legs, right?
Right, exactly.
What were some of the things that you realized you had to learn how to do again?
I did not expect to need to practice as much as I did. I am used to being able to go into trial, respond to things in the moment, give a closing argument without using a lot of notes. And, I just take for granted that I can do all these things because I've practiced it so many times in the courtroom. Well, when you're doing it over Zoom, it's a different learning curve, and you had to learn how to do it all over again. And when you're doing something like, for example, using a PowerPoint, which is very effective over a video platform, you have to learn how to rehearse your closing so that you can deliver it in a way that's authentic and doesn't sound practiced, but at the same time be in correspondence with what you're showing on screen. So you have to be saying the things as you're showing them. It's hard to skip around. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not using the PowerPoint as basically electronic notes that you're reading from the screen to the jury, because that's a bad habit to get into, whether you're in person or online. You don't want to just read something to the
Sing
jury.
it, sister. Oh man, amen, amen to that. That's for sure, right? You do not want to read it all back and forth.
Right. So that took quite a bit of practice, and I don't spend a ton of time practicing my closings. When I use PowerPoint in court, I'm only doing 10, 12, 15 slides, and I'm just calling them up as I come to them in my argument. It's not something where I used over 40 something slides because it was a heavily visual on-screen performance that I was giving. It needed to be different. And so it required so much practice to get it right. But it paid off in the end. If you're willing to invest the time, then as you do more and more of them, it gets easier and easier.
I hope that as this YouTube channel goes on, I hope that you are the first of many interviews. And I really think it's important that viewers understand that mistakes are going to happen.
Yes.
And I don't think that the question should ever be what happens if there is a mistake. I think the question always should be what happens when there's a mistake. And so I think it's so important that for everybody that I ever talk to, I ask the same question to everybody. And I say, tell me and tell everybody else the most embarrassing mistake you ever had and then how you fixed it.
Well, it's hard to pick just one. You know, the first thing that jumped out to me was the camera and camera angle and your presentation on screen is different, and you need to get another set of eyes on it. When you're talking to a jury, you're not doing it like this. You're not doing it this close up. You're not interacting with them in that way. And so there are things like, for example, when you're on a laptop, your computer is lower and your camera angle is usually angled from down going up. And that's not a flattering angle for anybody, but especially for a woman, if it's down going up and you're leaning back in your chair, your chest is front and center. And that's the first thing I noticed when I set up my tech setup for trial was, okay, this is not what I want the jury focused on when I'm presenting my case. The other thing that I noticed going through the trial, you know, I fixed that issue and had the webcam mounted up higher. And so that wasn't a problem. But when you're going through trial, you know, things like I had a button down shirt one day and I had to keep off camera. I've had to keep fixing the buttons and I ended up safety pinning them at one point because you don't want any gapping, because what's a tiny gap from 10 feet away becomes this huge gap that takes everybody's attention when you're within a foot of the camera.
Yep.
So that was one thing that I definitely had to troubleshoot as I was going along.
You know, I think one of the best business books that you can buy is Tina Fey's Bossy Pants. Have you read Bossy Pants?
I have.
And she makes a comment that television is a close-up medium, and I think that people got to understand that, and some people aren't going to like that. And I get that that's a concern, but I think you're right on the money when you say you got to pay attention to little things like that.
But here's the thing, though, you know, with a close-up medium, you can do things and you can make points in a way that you can't from 10 feet away.
Yeah, I agree. And
subtle gestures, subtle expressions have a huge impact that they don't have at trials. So it's fun to play around with. You know, okay, certain tools are taken away from you, but you know, what's taken away, you get so much in return that it's hard to complain.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my bureau chiefs back at the DA's office, when I was at the DA's office, when I was learning trial skills, he used to talk to me about the importance of modulating your voice. And I'll shout out Rob Isdeth. I hope he's around somewhere. I hope he sees this episode. Rob Isdeth used to talk to me about modulating your voice, and that it's important that sometimes you talk very quietly so that the jury hopefully leans in, and then, you know, you hit them with something big like that. I think something very similar happens with size of your camera and knowing what your microphone is doing, knowing when it's going to kind of cut out. I think all of that stuff, it's just, I think you're right. It's fun to play with. It's fun to learn how you take those old skills and you transition them to a new medium. And I think it's fun that there's other people that are getting excited about that too. What are some of the advantages that you see to litigating cases online?
The visual medium is, you know, like we were saying, fun to play around with, but you can really highlight specific things. Like, for example, when you're impeaching somebody with prior testimony, if you put that deposition up on screen to do a screen share, because you know you want to confront them with the testimony, so you have to show it to them, and you have that up on screen and you have it highlighted, that becomes very powerful. I mean, it's powerful in person, but this is a different way of really driving home the same point. You can see in black and white what that person said 6 months ago, or you know, a year ago when their deposition was taken, and that it's the polar opposite of what they're saying today. Or you can get them to say something and then put up a contract or a medical record or whatever it is that shows that that's exactly the opposite of what they just told you under oath. And that's really powerful, you know, juxtaposing the testimony, the live testimony of the person against a black and white document. That's one of the fun things I've been able to play around with.
You mentioned earlier PowerPoints, and in your presentation, you talked about outsourcing PowerPoints. And I got to tell you, that was one of the things I thought was fascinating. because I've always championed at our firm insourcing PowerPoint, and that it would be more cost efficient to try to find somebody in-house that could do that. But I got to admit that since the online stuff's been happening, I've been buying a whole lot of graphics. And I was wondering, have you outsourced PowerPoints again since you suggested that in the presentation?
I'm getting ready to for a trial I have coming up in October.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I will do it in-house again, as long as I'm presenting over Zoom. If I'm doing it in trial, live, maybe I might consider doing that myself. I have before, that's what I've done in the past. But I find that online, those visuals make such a huge impact that if you can have the animations and the graphics that I know I'm not capable of doing myself, even if you're only outsourcing just a few slides, just to make a few critical points,
Yeah.
I think that make a big impact. I had them do my whole PowerPoint. I actually did the, normal blue background with the little white arrows. I did that all myself and sent it to them, and then they converted it into something phenomenal. But, if you're on a budget, or if you have the ability to do a lot in-house, you can think, okay, I have got, this handful of slides that I really want the jury to focus on. And you can send 3 to 5 slides out and have somebody work on those for you, so you can have a compromise in between.
And did you use that same outfit that you called to do the slides as well?
Yeah, trial exhibits.
One of the things I've kind of been toying around with is the concept of hiring out graphics and slides through Upwork or something similar. Have you ever toyed around with that idea?
I haven't. I like working with Noah. I've used him in the past. And some of the things, because they present at trial so often, they really know what I'm looking for in terms of trial graphics. And a lot of times what I'm doing is a personal injury case that requires medical illustrations. And they have the ability to do amazing medical illustrations. So I really liked working with them. Although, if I did have the need for something like the abacus graphic that I showed on the NITA presentation, that might be something that if I have a specific idea in mind that I would outsource. But I'll admit, I'm analytical. I am not creative.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the chances that I'm going to have this great graphic in my mind that I want somebody to, then put onto the screen, probably I'm not coming up with that myself.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a place that I know that I'm limited, and I think it's something that I'm just far better off to have somebody else do. So, okay, let's talk about transition of skills. Do you think that the skills that you learned in your online civil jury trial translate into taking depositions online?
Yeah, the ability to use exhibits during a deposition is really similar to what I did in trial. The ability to screen share. I actually use for my depositions and arbitrations, I use Microsoft Surface. And you can buy the Surface pen, which you can use to mark up documents. So you can draw attention to specific things. And I've been using that a lot. But I'm really able to work with those skills because I've done it before. I've been there, done that. And so it's not, I guess I feel like I don't have to divide my attention as much. The more you do it, it's like when you first start driving a car and you keep thinking about every little thing that you have to do. And then, in time, it becomes second nature and you're not thinking about every single step of the driving process. You just get in your car and you drive it, right?
Right.
It's the same thing with using exhibits over Zoom or over any video platform. The more that you do it, the less it feels like you have to think about every little thing, and it becomes more second nature. And so that's what I found as, I went through the trial. The more practice that I got, same thing with using PowerPoints and that sort of thing, the more times you do it, the less you have to think about it.
You told me you use a Surface. So without let's getting too technical, describe for me sort of your rig. How do you make the Surface work in with Zoom? You just connect it through a USB and then share screen, or how's that working?
The setup that I do, and I'm going to transition to something a little bit different, but what I have right now set up is I have my Microsoft Surface laptop, which is what I use to take with me when I work from home, when I work, when I go to a deposition and want a laptop with me if I'm doing it live. And so in this type of a format, what I do is I connect my Surface to a Surface dock, which is the docking station where you can plug everything else in. So I have my regular size computer monitor, with the Microsoft Surface screen, so I've got two screens, then I use a separate camera, a webcam. The one on the Surface just, I mean, not to knock the Surface, I love it. I love that piece of technology, but you're going to look better on a separate freestanding webcam.
You always
And
are.
so I use that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I use that. I plug it into the dock. And then I have lighting as well as speakers. So that's kind of my setup right now.
And I'll tell you that one of the things that makes a Surface far superior to an iPad is that I don't believe that you can connect an external webcam to an iPad, or certainly not natively through the software. So being able to do that with a Surface is, I think, a huge benefit over Surface. Is there a piece of new gear that you're curious about, or is there something that you're looking to add on to your litigation studio?
What I would really like to do is, right now I'm set up in our conference room, which has our file library. The reason that I am is because this is the backdrop that I want. So what I really want to do is set up essentially a production studio. We have an empty office in our office space, and just set up a studio that is soundproof, has the lighting already set up, has the webcam and the monitor, so that all we have to do is bring our laptops in there and it's plug and play. Everything's already staged instead of me having to set it up each time.
I love that idea. I mean, I'm pitching that to folks at our firm too. Actually, it's one of the topics of Online Litigator that we're talking about. Maybe you'll be interested in it, is how to do that, how to take an empty space and try to make a studio out of it. I think a lot of people are going to be doing it real soon.
Well, it's not that difficult and it's not that expensive. And with the amount of time that it saves, just being able to come in, hook up your laptop, and then you're ready to go.
Yep.
I think it'd be silly not to.
And we talked about, once you have that space, we imagine that clients, when they need to have their depositions taken, would probably, you would assume that they would do that there. We talked about if you had clients where you needed to take recorded statements, you could do that so much easier. And it would almost enhance your practice if you just had this place where in the snap of a finger, you could go have people sit down and produce high quality video.
Absolutely.
Maybe this is too hard of a question to answer because maybe we're too early in the process, but who do you consider to be a hero of online litigation? Is there anybody that if you're standing on the shoulder of a giant, whose shoulders you might describe yourself as standing on?
Oh, wow. Noah's really the one that changed my way of thinking. I honestly have to say, I went into this Zoom trial with a very myopic view of how trials are conducted. And it was, this is the way I do it. I go to a courtroom, I present my opening statement, we're standing in front of the jury box, and we go through it the way that I've always done it for the last 20 years. And I actually had told Noah, I wanted to go to closing. I'd go to the court for closing and have them video me doing closing. And when we couldn't do that, I think I talked about that in the Anita presentation, when I couldn't do that, then I told Noah, but wait, I'm going to do it in my office that way then. And we're going to have the screen behind me with the PowerPoint. And so I can do my PowerPoint the way I always do it, with the screen behind me. And I'm going to stand there. And he said, okay, we can do it however you want. But let's just try it this way first. Let's try it with you doing the PowerPoint online and just see how it looks. And he really got me to do a complete 180. And instead of thinking of how can I do it exactly the same way, but online, he got me thinking, okay, what advantages do I have in being online and how do I exploit those? Because that's where you get your edge. The people who are trying to do it the same way and think, man, I can't believe I have to do this over camera, and this sucks, and I hate this.
Yeah.
What you're doing is making this fatal mistake of letting the circumstances control you. If you think of it from the perspective of, I control the circumstances, I don't let them control me, that opens up a whole new world. And then you really have an edge in your presentation.
Oh, I love it. It's so right. It's so true. I think I know the answer to this question. I think I know exactly what you're going to say, but who do you think would be another person for us to interview on Online Litigator?
Well, obviously Noah.
I mean, yeah, right. You think we could talk him into coming on?
Oh, yeah. He's very generous with his time and really has a lot of expertise in the finer points of the technology, can give you an idea of what's out there and what's available. He also, though, has sat through a lot of jury trials. So
Mm-hmm.
he has a good idea of how things need to be presented and what is persuasive, what works, what doesn't work. And he's been sought out as a resource from different courts and different organizations who are trying to, at this point, pivot and do things on an online platform. So he's definitely at the forefront of this issue.
Is there anything you would like to hear about improving online litigation skills?
I'll give you two answers to that one question because I'm a lawyer and that's what we do, right? I could just say it depends.
Yeah, right.
But instead, what I'll say is, you know, my research lately has been on technology, on what I need for the basic setup. I think I've got that nailed down. And then now that I have the basic setup, how do I take it to the next level? And so that would be something that I think appeals to a lot of people, would appeal to me, is what basics of technology do I need to get started on my own?
Right.
And how can I move things up to the next level, make them just that a little bit better, just give me a little bit more of an edge. But you know, the one thing that so my second answer is what I was really looking at online before I started the trial was how to make sure that I look professional on screen in terms of my appearance, in terms of my clothing, my makeup, my backdrop, my lighting. How do I get that set up so it not only appeases my vanity, but presents an image to the jury that is professional, because that's their first impression of you. And it's you can't overstate the importance of that first impression. If the other lawyer has the laptop camera angled up their nose and horrible lighting, and you know they're sitting in their home office, versus you have the professional lighting and are sitting in, you know, a law library or something equivalently professional, the first impression of you is going to be better.
It's Nixon Kennedy, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So you really want to make sure that you put a lot of thought and effort into that first impression.
I do have a episode that's actually partially written. And the idea of that episode is, if you called me and told me you were starting from a laptop with a built-in webcam and you were going to spend increasingly more money, what would I have you do? So maybe I will scratch that first itch for you on the first one that you talked about, and hopefully sometime I'll get that up sooner rather than later. But in the meantime, I can't thank you enough for joining us. I can't thank you enough for your time. I cannot tell you enough how cool I think it is what you've done, and how much I enjoy the times we've chatted on the phone and the time that we spent here. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And I hope you'll come back again sometime, or generate some material for the Online Litigator, because again, I think you have so much to teach us, and I think that anybody that's done it and is willing to look back and share is somebody that we should really, really put up on a pedestal. So folks, do not forget to check out, and again, I hope I put a link right here. Please do not forget to check out the presentation that she's done. It's amazing. And Coreen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, if you enjoyed that video, if you learned something, please click the like button. It's how you tell YouTube that this is good content. Please also subscribe to the channel, because it's how you'll get notified when we create all sorts of new videos, which we will. Most importantly, though, please share this video with other people that you know are interested in improving their online litigation skills. Until next time, thanks very much for stopping by.